Sojourn, despite countless nerfs, always rises to the top of the meta. But why?
Yeah, I'm classy, with a mix of nasty. It can beat me and you like Cassie, sassy.
3 things are true in life: death, taxes, and Sojourn having a top 3 DPS pick rates. She's received a plethora of nerfs from when she was first released, and yet she's been part of almost every Overwatch 2 meta. Basically, she's inevitable.
I am inevitable.
So get ready for some insane railguns, crazy TP overclocks, and the secret to why Sojourn will never die.
Why don't you just fucking die already?
The first game we'll be taking a look at is from underdog team Gen G, where Zodiel and his team took a map of EU heavyweights Alcacia. Now, because Sojourn is Canadian, I'm gonna use poutine to structure the video. The base of the dish, the fries, being Sojourn's consistent threats or damage outputs. Yes, this is kinda obvious, but it's the enormous elephant in the room which I kinda need to address. This is all thanks to Sojourn's weapon, I wish I got railed. And quite literally, in the first fight, Zodiel farms up his rail, softening up the enemy Kiri, landing the first kill. As you can see, that's traded out by the enemy Sojourn, which just furthers the point. The one-taps don't just stop there. You can see Zodiel fire his disruptor shots the second before he lands the Kiri kill once more. This kinda explains why, despite Sojourn's inability to technically one-shot, a few SMG shots or your disruptor shots can soften up a target to meet that threshold. Kinda like he does here once more up against Lubda. But obviously, Sojourn is more than just clicking on her heads. In fact, you look at Alcacia's comp and playing into ball isn't very fun. The key thing is paying attention when the ball no longer becomes a threat, which is often when Pile Driver gets used. The same could go for Winston when Bubble gets used. We'll talk about how you can force these cooldowns later, but for now, you can see that Backbone sets a TP for the high ground. Zodiel almost immediately takes it, until realizing that if he stays, he's gonna get booped and die. So he TPs back, and once Chase uses Pile Driver near the bot, it gives Zodiel the perfect opening to take the TP, knowing he can't get punished. If you want to take this a step further, you could get your Brig to come with you, but Crispy is busy rallying and bullying off the ball. Usually when I talk about beating dive, the last stage I talk about is pushing forward, which is exactly what we saw, but just with TP. We see an even better example here between the recent Alcacia and Vision game, when Tama tries to go for a soft engage, being forced to slam out, and then Checkmate immediately TPs in. Why? Well, Doom hasn't got any cooldowns anymore. He can't punish the TP. Now, I am planning to make an entire video dedicated to this Doom strat, so subscribe to stay tuned. But I was worried when I saw the Doomfist initially not working.
Oh no, this can't be.
The bottom line here as Sojourn is that you, with the rest of your team, should be pushing forward when dive heroes have already used their cooldowns. Back to Esperanza, and now, armed with the Overclock, Zodiel pushes super hard and early, and while you might watch this and think the Overclock gets no value, it's not that simple. Firstly, the idea behind it is to stop Alcacia from setting up their angles. More specifically, forcing the enemy Tracer to leave and give up her angle. From Kaneil's POV, you can see that Checkmate is forced to blink all the way to point, with Backbone landing that kill. Ultimately, it was Zodiel's early overclock that put this pressure on, as well as Tread flying to the high ground to force up the Tracer. Looking at how Lubda uses overclock, it seems like a lot of the effort is in pocketing the Sojourn to get a good angle. In this fight, Tama once again engages just a tad bit too early, which gives Checkmate the opening to push forward with TP. This push is aided by the overclock, and considering he's on a godly angle with nobody to contest him, it's not shock that Violet ends up Ajaxing. Again, I'm gonna save the Ajaxes for my Doom video, but bro is really getting that Saudi money. Now, it's all well and nice pushing forward when a Doom has no cooldowns, but how do you live that initial burst of cooldowns to begin with? That's where we get into the gravy of the poutine, baiting and perks. I've talked about it in the past, but baiting boils down to applying pressure to the enemy team in some shape or form and then leaving immediately after. Going back to where Checkmate dies first, and notice how Landon is forced to use the Kitsune to counteract the point pressure from Gen G. Everyone on Gen G are able to retreat back pretty easily because they're already playing distance. and once the Kitsune's gone, Zodial takes the top right angle, finding that Kiri kill that we saw earlier. A very easy test you can do in your games is ask the question, do I want to be pushed or dove here? And if the answer to that question is no, you're probably not in a good position. Another great example comes from the Korean Grand Finals between T1 and Zeta. Crazy Raccoon applied pressure with the nano boost, allowing Jumpin to jump to the high ground and actually engage. But the important factor is that this baits Donghack into pressuring Jeonbin, which is important because while all this is happening, Lip's on the flank unscouted and unmarked, finding that juicy satisfying kill on the Wuyang.
Oh, I just nutted!
Of course, do note that Lip farms rail before he flanks, but also notes that you can and should be taking flanks that hide your positioning. You gotta think like your visual from R6.
Nobody ever sees me.
Now would be a good time to mention perks. Sojourn's shiny new perk is giving her Disruptor Shot a slowing effect, which she actually had during the beta, but that shit was broken as fuck. Despite that, most Sojourns still picked the Overclock perk. Zodial did, Lubda did, and so did Lip. The only exception was in one overtime round, but that might be because Crazy Raccoons only had a minute to attack. So, slowing Ventress for example, and actually getting immediate value with the Disruptor Shots becomes more important. As for the major perk, it's a no-brainer, just pick the double slide. The real bonus is that you can play way more aggressively with double slide, which I've shown examples of in the past. Most of the time, the height reduction isn't a big deal, and it won't stop you from taking the same escapes that you'd usually take. There's also a reduction in horizontal movement by about 3 meters from what I've tested, but it's not a big downside, especially considering the other major perk is just complete ass. Maybe if you could overcharge the railgun up to 125 energy, it could be decent, but I don't want to give the devs any ideas. Now onto the final layer of the dish, or the cheese curds, which is Sojourn's flexibility. In other words, Sojourn can be played with almost any backline, on almost any map, in almost any comp. This couldn't be more true with the recent Brick Kiri style that's come to prominence. I already kinda explained it in my Ryan video, but Brick Kiri is really strong at pocketing aggressive DPS angles and stopping enemy flankers in their tracks. In this fight, Zodial takes a super aggressive angle and gets slammed and mined by the enemy ball, but a few packs by Crispy plus a power slide and Zodial's all good. If you watched my May video too, you would have also seen the lengths that Crispy went to pocket Zodial in general because he was low-key carrying. Looking at the bigger picture though, Sojourn's been part of so many different metas that I'm actually going to speedrun them with a counter in the bottom right. We start with her initial release in the 2022 beta, where she was played in the Summer Showdown. Then the Queen Lucio Brick meta came around mid-2022, then Kiri got released, and she was hard meta alongside Sojourn at the end of 2022. In 2023, we had a very hard dive meta, so one of the few times that Sojourn misses out. Despite this, in the World Cup, she was played with Bapalari, spearheaded by Saudi Arabia. In 2024, she was pretty much meta the entire year, barring the Malga meta that we saw a year ago. Then, Hazard came in, with Soj dominating in that meta too. And now, we're seeing her being played with Brick Kiri. Listen, my counting isn't very accurate, but hopefully you get the idea. She's a very generalist character, which begs the question, how come we're not seeing so much Sojourn now compared to Freya? Is she falling out the meta with more competition? Well, there's 3 reasons as to why Freya might be getting picked, but before I get onto those, a quick coaching plug. Click the top link down below for more details if you want to climb. Anyways, the first reason is the type of survivability. Sojourn, especially with double slide, is really good at escaping long horizontal distances. Freya trades that out with much more verticality. So, on maps with tons of rooftops or high buildings like Helios, Freya can be better. Conversely, when it's long, flat and open, like a new Queen Street, Soj would have a slight edge. The second is solo value. Freya doesn't need a ton of pocket to get value. She can hang in the air and get her own angles without too much worry. But as we've seen with Sojourn, she can require a lot more help to get value. That isn't just with characters like Brick though. As we saw in my Sigma video, Freja can outmaneuver a Sig on her own thanks to updraft, but Sojourn kinda requires a Lucio speed to outmaneuver a Sig shield. The last factor to mention is just player comfort. When's the last time you saw Quartz or Lubda play Freja? Even if she was better from an objective standpoint, if a player is better at playing Sojourn, they should probably play Sojourn. And anyways, I'd say both heroes are roughly the same in terms of power level. Anyways, that's it for the video. If you enjoyed, be sure to subscribe because at the time of recording, I'm like 100 subscribers away from that big 50k. Anyways, until next time.